Thank you for participating in the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office Responsible Employee Training. Fulfilling your obligations as a responsible employee, including completing this training, helps create a campus that is safe for all. This training will help you understand what conduct is prohibited by both the university's policy on prohibited discrimination, harassment, and related misconduct, and the policy on prohibited sexual harassment under Title IX, called the Title IX policy. You'll also learn about your role and obligations as a responsible employee and how to fulfill those requirements by making reports to the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office. We recognize these topics can be difficult and can impact those designated as responsible employees on a personal level. We encourage you to take breaks or to engage in other ways of showing self-compassion as you complete this training. All of the resources available to our students are available to you as well, and those can be found on the website at safe.unc.edu. Please also reach out to us at reportandresponse@unc.edu if you need support before or while you complete this training. The EOC has two policies that prohibit certain conduct by students, employees, and others on our campus. If a responsible employee hears about behavior prohibited by these policies, you are required to share that information with the EOC as soon as possible. This allows the university to provide resources and reporting options to individuals throughout the institution. These two policies define what situations you need to share with the EOC. The broader policy on prohibited discrimination, harassment, and related misconduct prohibits any form of discrimination or harassment based on a protected status, which includes sexual misconduct. Responsible employees are also required to share misconduct defined by the policy on prohibited sexual harassment under Title IX, which prohibits sexual harassment as defined in federal regulations. Discrimination and harassment based on protected status are specifically prohibited by EOC policies. Protected status refers to the identities listed here on the screen: age, disability, gender expression, gender identity, genetic information, race, color, national origin, religion, sex, sexual orientation, and veteran status. Sexual harassment, sexual assault, and sexual violence, and sexual exploitation are also prohibited under this policy because they are recognized as severe forms of discrimination based on sex. You should also know that other forms of related misconduct are prohibited under this policy. Those include interpersonal or relationship violence, stalking, and retaliation. And if you learn of these behaviors, you must share that information with the EOC. The policies apply to conduct that occurs on campus and to conduct that happens off campus during a university program or activity. Examples of covered off-campus conduct include conduct at university study abroad trips, online class meetings, academic internships, and away games for student athletes. The policies may apply to conduct that occur off campus and outside of a university program or activity if it has or is reasonably likely to have continuing harmful effects for the campus community or could create a hostile environment. You as a responsible employee don't need to determine whether off-campus conduct impacts the campus community. Either way, you should make a responsible employee report so that EOC can provide resources and support to the impacted individual. The university defines discrimination as any unlawful distinction, preference, or detriment to a person compared to others based on that person's protected status. Discrimination is defined as conduct that is serious enough to limit or interfere with someone's employment or to interfere with their access to educational programs or activities. Discrimination based on any of these 13 protected statuses is prohibited. If a responsible employee learns that someone is being treated differently than others based on a protected status, this is information that needs to be shared with the EOC as soon as possible. Harassment is defined as any type of conduct that's based on someone's protected status that interferes with their ability to participate in their work or education or other university programs, activities, or services. Harassment can take two forms: quid pro quo harassment, which means this for that. An example of this would be requesting sexual favors in exchange for a grade or employment benefit. We'll talk more about the second form, hostile environment harassment, on this next slide. The university defines hostile environment harassment as severe, persistent, or pervasive conduct based on protected status that creates a hostile, intimidating, or abusive environment. Generally, this is a pattern of conduct, but it can also be one incident if that one incident is sufficiently severe. Sexual assault and sexual violence are forms of sexual harassment that involve having or attempting to have sexual contact without consent. At UNC, we have an affirmative consent standard, which means that consent must be communicated affirmatively, consciously, and freely through outward demonstrations that show a clear willingness to engage in sexual conduct. Those outward demonstrations can be verbal or action-based, but they must always demonstrate a clear willingness to engage in the agreed-upon sexual contact. We define sexual exploitation as another form of sexual harassment. UNC's policy prohibits several specific forms of sexual exploitation. These include the following: threatening to out someone as gay or trans, looking at someone's nudity or sexual contact without their consent or causing someone else to do so, such as sending unsolicited nude pictures to others, streaming or distributing pictures, video, or audio of nudity or sexual contact without consent of all parties involved. As an example, looking at a nude picture of a friend's girlfriend without her consent, or sending a nude photo your boyfriend sent to you to your friends without his consent. Other examples of sexual exploitation include prostituting another individual, exposing someone to a sexually transmitted infection without disclosing to them that you have the STI, failing to use agreed-upon contraception, such as stealthing or removing your condom when you agreed that you would use it, or saying that you're in the pill when you are not. And lastly, inducing incapacitation to engage in sexual behavior with someone could also be considered sexual exploitation under the policy. The policies also prohibit interpersonal or relationship violence, which is defined as actions taken against an intimate partner or family member that cause intimidation or fear or are threatening. Stalking is also prohibited by these policies, which is defined by repeated, unwanted actions that cause fear or create a hostile, intimidating, or abusive environment. Complicity and retaliation are forms of related misconduct that are also prohibited under this policy, which pertain to how individuals interact with the EOC office. Complicity is defined as any act that assists another person with behavior that violates EOC's policies. Retaliation is any action that would discourage a person from engaging with the EOC, such as trying to discourage someone from reporting or preventing someone from seeking accommodations. Now that you have been introduced to what behavior is prohibited under these UNC policies, let's talk through the responsible employee designation on our campus. Responsible employees are employees who are required to report that prohibited conduct to the EOC because of their position or role. There are 4 categories of responsible employees: those with significant responsibility for student and campus activities outside of normal classroom instruction, employees with administrative or supervisory responsibilities on campus, advisors to registered student groups, and employees who take students abroad. Here are some examples of people on our campus who are identified as responsible employees because of their role and responsibilities. It's important to understand the scope of the responsible employee obligation and to let people know you are a responsible employee early on in your working relationship. Once designated as a responsible employee, that designation applies to any information you receive, whether or not it's while you are acting in the role that caused you to be a responsible employee. The designation, in other words, is not a hat that you can take off. For example, if you are a responsible employee because you are a supervisor, you still have to make a responsible employee report if you receive information about misconduct from someone you don't supervise. Your responsible employee obligation also applies whether or not you receive the information at work. For example, if you have young children and a UNC student provides childcare for your family, and that student discloses experiencing a sexual assault by another UNC student while they're working for you, this is a responsible employee report you need to make to the EOC. Once you receive information about misconduct, you should notify the EOC as soon as possible and share all that you know. Do not investigate the incident yourself, and do not share the information with others outside of the EOC. You should not promise confidentiality or anonymity to the person who shared the information with you. You can share resources with that person, and you should let them know you need to contact the EOC. Now we'll talk about how you can make a responsible employee report and share the information with the EOC. You can make a report on EOC's online reporting form via email to any member of the EOC staff, in person at the EOC, or by telephone. While any member of the EOC office can take your report, we do encourage you to reach out to the Associate Vice Chancellor, Title IX Coordinator, the Director of Report and Response, or one of our Report and Response coordinators. Here's what EOC's online reporting form looks like. You'll find it by going to eoc.unc.edu and clicking on Make a Report in the upper right-hand corner. As a responsible employee, you should report all known information to the EOC, including the names of the impacted person and others involved, the date and time of the incident, and the location of the incident. While you should not investigate, you should ask for the name of the individuals involved so that the EOC can take steps to ensure the safety of the impacted individuals. We recognize people look to you as a trusted resource, which is why they are disclosing this information in the first place. We know that you, as responsible employees, care a lot about the people who might share misconduct with you, and that you want to make sure you respond appropriately and compassionately. We also want you to feel comfortable with this role and to make sure you understand what happens after you make a report to the EOC. We'll spend some time talking about this in the next section. Responsible employees play a very important role on our campus. You are likely to be the first person who learns about an individual's experience of prohibited misconduct, and your response could impact whether or not that person seeks further support. It is critical that you respond with care. First and foremost, listen supportively by giving them your full attention. Express your concern for their well-being and share that you and the university take the situation very seriously. Thank them for sharing this information with you. In addition to listening supportively, you can provide them resources. This may include asking them if they need help addressing immediate health or safety needs, which you can do by connecting them with UNC Police, campus health, or counseling and psychological services. You can also let them know that the university has confidential resources that they can talk to. Always follow their lead in the conversation. If they want to focus on the emotional impact of the event rather than the facts, let them do so. You don't have to have a fact-finding agenda in the conversation. Your role is to support, listen, and share what you learn with the EOC. Sometimes people will want to speak to a confidential resource rather than someone who has a responsible employee reporting obligation. It can be helpful for you to share with them early on in the conversation that you have a reporting obligation, and before they go further by sharing information that you'll have to provide to the EOC, you can instead connect them with someone confidential. We've provided some sample language here, but we do encourage you to practice your own version so that you can feel comfortable when you encounter this situation. We also encourage you to let folks know that you are a responsible employee early in your work relationship so that they are informed about your reporting obligations before they might share information with you. This could be in a staff meeting or during office hours. When the EOC receives a report, the safety of the individuals involved and the campus community is of paramount importance. EOC staff and the response team will assess the nature of the reported conduct and the potential risk to the campus community. EOC staff will send an email to the impacted person to offer resources and reporting options, including law enforcement, and explain immediate medical care options. They'll explain available protective measures and invite the impacted person to connect with them directly. When the impacted individual receives that email from the EOC, it's up to them whether or not to respond to the EOC. Whether or not they decide to respond, they can use any of the resources shared in the email. Responding in this way allows the university to make sure that all impacted individuals have access to all of the information they may need, and also allow the impacted individual to be empowered in how they'd like to move forward, if at all. It also allows UNC as an institution to provide a consistent response to individuals across campus, regardless of which area on campus or which department they're from. Here's some information about the resources shared in those outreach emails. EOC can assist with a number of supportive measures, including a campus no contact order, changes to housing, class schedules or work assignments, and help managing classes, workloads, and deadlines. We can connect individuals with confidential medical and emotional support resources, as well as formal reporting options. The EOC report and response coordinators are well trained to work with folks on an individual basis regarding their needs and what action, if any, they're seeking from the university. Now that we understand the responsible employee role, let's apply what we've learned. Scenario 1 reads as follows. You are a library staff member who advises a student group on campus. One day, while you're working the circulation desk, Ash, a student you are close with, but who is not in the student group you advise, asks if she can talk with you privately. The two of you go into your office and Ash begins to cry. It's hard for you to hear everything Ash is saying, but you understand that she's telling you she was raped at a fraternity party. She asks you to promise not to tell anyone. In this scenario, you'll want to respond compassionately to Ash. Thank her for sharing the information with you. Let her know that you are concerned for her well-being and want to make sure she has the resources she may need. You'll also need to make a responsible employee report, so it's important to help her understand what that means. This prompt illustrates several key points. First, even though this student is not in the student group you advise, you still have a responsibility to share this information with the EOC. As a reminder, you can't take off the responsible employee hat once designated. Second, you don't need to do any investigating to get additional information. What you need to share with EOC is Ash's name and that she disclosed a sexual assault. Finally, you cannot promise Ash confidentiality, but you can let her know that you'll keep the information she shared with you private and only share it with the EOC. In this situation, when Ash asks to speak privately with you, that would have been a good time to pause and let her know about your responsible employee obligations and ask if she would prefer to be connected with a confidential resource. Scenario 2 reads as follows. You are a director of graduate studies in the college. Min, a second-year graduate student, tells you that she is having a really hard time with her advisor, Alex. Min says she's the only female graduate student working with Alex, and Alex is much more critical of her work than she is of the male graduate students. She also says that when she and the other graduate students meet with Alex, Alex talks over her, interrupts her, and criticizes her in front of the group. Alex doesn't engage in this behavior towards male students. Min doesn't want you to tell anyone because she's afraid Alex will speak negatively about her in a recommendation letter. This sounds like gender-based harassment or discrimination, so you should make a responsible employee report. You would share with EOC Min and Alex's names and the information about the behavior that Min has shared with you. While you cannot promise Min confidentiality, you can let her know that EOC is available to talk about supportive measures that may be helpful to address the behavior and to prevent retaliation if Min wants to pursue action with the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office. This third scenario reads as follows. You are a department chair and you are mentoring Preet, a new faculty member in another department. At one of your regular lunches, Preet mentions to you that his interactions with the business manager in his department have been very upsetting. He says that when he turned in his W-2, she asked where he's really from. He tells you she has repeatedly invited him to her church and said that real Americans are Christians. He has also heard her complain to other staff about the way his lunch smells. Preet isn't sure that this is based on his national origin or perceived religion, but he wants to address the behavior. This scenario could be discrimination or harassment based on actual or perceived race, national origin, or religion, so you should make a responsible employee report. This person disclosing the behavior doesn't have to be certain that there is a policy violation, and neither do you as a responsible employee. If the behavior could be a potential policy violation, you should report it. Scenario number 4. You are a supervisor in Campus Rec. Amir, an employee you supervise, comes to your office and tells you he's having some trouble with his coworker Max. You ask what's going on, and Amir tells you that Max started a group text message chat with all the guys on staff and has sent nude pictures of his girlfriend to the group chat several times. Amir says that Max sends these photos at night after work, but that these messages are making Amir uncomfortable working with Max. This fourth scenario could be sexual exploitation. Even though Max is engaging in this conduct after work, he's directing it to his coworkers, and it's impacting their work. After thanking Amir for sharing this with you, you should make a responsible employee report. EOC will reach out to Amir and can work with him to put supportive measures in place to address the behavior. Now that we understand our responsible employee obligations and how to meet those obligations, there are a few next steps. First, you'll need to complete the quiz that goes with this course in Carolina Talent in order to complete your training requirement. Second, we encourage you to build on the skills you'll need as a responsible employee by taking the EOC's Haven training, Helping Advocates for Ending Violence Now. This training emphasizes the importance of listening, responding compassionately, and connecting victim survivors to resources on campus and in the community. You can sign up for Haven at safe.unc.edu. Finally, we encourage you to reach out to the EOC with any questions and to visit safe.unc.edu to more thoroughly familiarize yourself with campus resources. Thank you for your time today and your attention to this important role. We appreciate your support in creating a safe campus community for all. Please do reach out to the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office if you have questions throughout your time at Carolina. We wish you well.